goal of the blockade with Venezuela to regime change? It's the blockade. Not to let anybody going through that shouldn't be going through.
WMDs. WMDs. You guys remember that not too long ago? That was the reason for all of the attacks on those boats. Well, it looks like that actually wasn't the reason. Jiminy Cricket. Holy moly. Gosh darn it. Who could have seen that coming? Oh, yeah. We did.
Regime change. Oil. Venezuela has lots of oil.
You remember? I remember. That's right. Let's talk about it. Oh my gosh.
You remember they took all of our energy rights. They took all of our oil from not that long ago, and we want it back. But they took it. They illegally took it. You mentioned getting land back to Venezuela. What land? Getting land, oil rights, whatever we had. They took it away because we had a president that maybe wasn't watching. But they're not going to do that. We want it back. They took our oil rights. We had a lot of oil there. As you know, they threw our companies out, and we want it back.
Okay, at this point, if you still believe in the reasoning for going down to Venezuela and doing what they're doing right now, first attacking all those fishermen boats, and in case you need a recap, right, we're talking at least 104 people have been unalived, right? 28 to 29 different strikes on different vessels, right? Because it was about the drogas. You guys remember that, right? That's what it was about. There was no mention of oil before, right? There was no mention of oil before, right? Right? Go back. Go back. Watch my previous video. I have it linked. There was no mention of oil from this administration. It was all about the drogas, right? And that was shady enough, right? There were multiple reasons why it was. Again, check my previous video. So why did the narrative change to oil? Because it was always about oil, as you can see from my previous video. By the way, the U.S. is claiming that these are unlawful combatants, right? But the other countries involved, they are claiming different. These are fishermen. These people have families. I want to point this out because these people, right, already shady circumstances, already not legal, right? But now that we hear the real reason, we find that these people's unalivings were perhaps under false pretenses. We must not forget that. We must not forget these people and what happened to them. We must not forget the double tap order, right? We must not forget this. This is why, if somebody asks you why the truth is important, why does it matter? Why do you have to call out all the things he's doing? Other people have done this kind of stuff in the past. This is why. Because when somebody lies to you and you know they're lying, and you give them permission to lie even further because you're used to that behavior from them and other people in the past, then you are just rolling over and letting them rub your belly. That's what that is. You are accepting a lower standard, an ever continuing lower standard. See, there is no bottom from here. That's the problem. We can just keep going down and down and down and down, right? That it's escalating. With every permission that we all give him, the more he will do. Okay, in case you were wondering about the situation and what he means by Venezuela taking over our land and our oil, right? Again, words are very important. It's very important. We had U.S. companies that were digging for oil in Venezuela. Starting in the late 70s, Venezuela started to nationalize and started taking those assets back. Now, to be clear, they are a sovereign nation. Under the UN Charter, every country has the permanent sovereignty over its natural resources. This means Venezuela has the legal right to nationalize its oil. If they don't pay enough compensation, it is usually treated as a civil commercial dispute, not as a reason for military action. Okay? So that sums it up very nicely there. In 1976, Venezuela nationalized. American oil companies were forced out. They were paid a little bit, but not a lot, not enough to match what they had lost, right? So Venezuela does indeed owe these American oil companies money. That is very clear. And then in 2007, they took it all back. Again, not really paying these companies for the operations or the oil that they are losing, right? That is very clear. Just to be clear with you, Venezuela does owe these American oil companies money. I know that's a layered statement, right? You know, you can think about why they were even over there in that country in the first place, taking that oil. I'm sure there was deals and money going around. I'm sure it seemed like a good idea at the time. Venezuela changed its mind. My core problem is that they didn't pay back in full. And from what I've been reading about Venezuela, again, see my previous video, they likely were never going to be able to pay it back the way the government currently is and has been for a long time. They don't run a country that does well at paying back its debts. Matter of fact, it's famously known for that. But the problem isn't, does the U.S. need to get their money back? They do. The problem is how they're going about getting it back now. And again, we go back to the fishing boats and those people who were unalived under false pretenses. Notice how the narrative is going away from the Drogas and going into the oil. Imagine being a family member of one of those people, knowing this, seeing this. And now we're finding out about the seizing of now multiple tankers and a giant blockade preventing people from going in or out of Venezuelan waters. Full on military actions. That is why they had to set it up with the WMDs and the Drogas, right? They had to justify the legality for escalating it from a civil issue to a full on military might issue. National security. And not about money and oil. WMDs, guys, is also familiar. And if you're wondering why the U.S. didn't go after their assets before, the answer is they have been doing so, but they have been doing it through lawyers and paperwork for 18 years. And I don't know if you know this, but the U.S. has sanctions on Venezuela, and Venezuela has been treated as an international pariah since seizing these assets. That is why you might hear of Venezuela being treated as a pariah. It is because of things like this. Again, they refuse to pay the money, and oftentimes in situations like this, that is one of the recourses. Is when you are a pariah internationally, they might not loan your country money or do business with you, trade with you, things like that. And in case you were curious, I actually found this very interesting. I just found this out too. One of the reasons why they decided to go after it legally rather than more aggressively is at the time during the Hugo Chavez seizing of the remaining oil assets, we were at war with Iraq and Afghanistan. Isn't that interesting? The timing. So basically, the U.S. wasn't really in a position to go down there militarily, anyways. They might have if they weren't at war with Iraq and Afghanistan already, you know. Also, at the time, America really needed the oil from Venezuela, even though that happened. So if they gave Venezuela too much trouble back then, it would have been higher gas prices. Another interesting detail to the whole thing. Now that we don't have to depend on them so much, it appears this administration feels they can just full on push its military might onto Venezuela. Pause at your leisure below. As I said before, there is no bottom. There's no bottom. It'll just keep going down as long as we allow it to. I'll put it to you like this. Let's say you are within a toxic relationship and they are increasingly toxic throughout a period of time, and you are observing this repeatedly, day by day, every day. And let's say you allow this to happen because this is how they've always been, just increasing over time. And your previous people you've been with too, same thing. They've also been increasingly toxic to you over the years. This is normal to you. Maybe your parents were toxic towards you as well, and you grew up just thinking that was just the way to behave. I ask you a question. How many of you in your whole life have been in such a situation? I know that quite a few have just allowed it to happen, and things have just gotten better. Or was there a point where you've had enough and you've replaced them? Where is that point for you now? All right. Like and share if you like what I'm saying. Comment if you do or don't. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you later.